Emma. I'm hoping that you can all hear me all right. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. So I just wanted to let you know, for those of you that are here, we're just waiting for everybody to get all logged in and set up. Just for everyone who's just logging in here, we're going to give it another minute, and then we're all set to go. All right, so I'm looking at 11:01 on my end. As long as everybody's all set, we're going to get going. If everybody could type real quick a Y or a yes into your questions pane for me, per usual, just so I know that I'm coming through and everybody can hear me. Great. All right, so I want to start, of course, by saying thank you so much for coming back. And my name is Emma. I'm here with Cortina again. He presented the last technical lab that you guys saw, and he's here to answer any questions you may have behind the scenes today while I'm presenting. So as you know, or most of you probably know, today's lab is on roles. We are going to be going through exactly what they are, when would you use them, why would you use them, and what can they do. So at a very base level, roles are used to restrict access to folders or data objects, as well as to override general settings. So this lab is designed as a precursor to Travis's multi-tenanting lab that's going to be in 2 weeks. If you're very comfortable with roles, you've worked in them, you really know every nook and cranny, this is definitely going to be a bit of a refresher. But we certainly are going to go through some tips to diagnose specific error messages and a few corner case examples that you really might not be familiar with unless you've hit them yourself. So if you do think that there might be something there for you to benefit from, definitely stick around. We're really excited about today's presentation. Additionally, we certainly encourage you, whether you stick around for this one or not, to check out our tech lab later this month that's going to expand upon the concept of user permissions quite a bit. And that, as I said, is going to be delivered by Travis. All right, so I'm going to navigate over to Exago. There we go. Okay. So many people often ask how to limit the access that their users have. Maybe it's editing reports or viewing certain reports or different functionalities that they don't want all their users to have access to. So one step of this process can involve something called roles. Today I'm going to walk you through setting up 3 different roles that you might see in a given company utilizing Exago. They're pretty standard. We have, of course, adapted them to our Northwind data set, so they will make sense in the context of our reports, but you can certainly translate them to any other company. As we're going to see today, roles can be created in the admin console, and we're going to focus on that implementation for simplicity purposes today, but they're often created through the API to dynamically set a user's access, and this is going to be a little bit more in tune with what Travis will be explaining on our lab in 2 weeks regarding multi-tenanting, but know that this does relate to that. And I do just want to one more time restate to emphasize that this is only one way to set up and activate roles. I'm showing you one possible way to set up this type of user-specific permissions. Sorry, I think I cut out there for a second. All right, so first let's make sure that we have a full understanding. As we said, roles can be used to restrict access to folders or data objects. So your folders are going to be what you see here. Your data objects are what's available to you to create a report. And then also to override general settings. Roles are activated in the main settings for any given role. So if I'm in the administration console, our roles are going to be right down here. And you can see right now they're all gray, so none are active. If I expand, we can see the 3 roles that I've set up for today's purposes. And I'll go ahead into Associate. And if we go into the main settings, you can see this active flag right here. It's as simple as checking it, clicking Apply, and then navigating back to your front end. All right. So our general settings that are written to our base configuration are going to be defined in the general settings of the administration console. So you can see this heading up here. It says general, and everything below it is going to be written to your base configuration. Now we're going to be able to, based on the user, change some of those settings. So what we have in our general settings is going to be the default for any given role. If we look, let's look within feature UI settings, and we can say that every report type is set to true. So in the base config, the users are allowed to create or edit any type of report. If we then go to our role and we look at general settings, you can see that the only ones I have to specify are false. This true here is going to be the equivalent of leaving it blank because it's set true by default in our base configuration. All right. So now that we've gotten some of that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and walk through these roles for you guys. So within roles, we have 5 sections. You can see them right in front of us. We have main, general, folders, objects, and filters. And they are aptly named to give you an idea of what you're modifying, but we, of course, want to just go through them so that they're really clear. We don't want them to be at all unclear to all of you. So the first role that we're going to be creating is designed for an associate in a given company with a little bit of reporting ability that includes knowledge of the Express View designer. We're then going to go back and create roles that are less restricting and show how we can activate them one at a time to change accessibility options within Exago. All right. So to begin, I'm going to bring open these main settings of the associate, and we're going to walk through each of these. So the first one, of course, is to activate it. We went through this, and I will show you how that works exactly when we do activate each of these roles and see how they affect our UI. The person that we're creating a role for right now is an associate. So they're in charge of, they need to know what levels the stocks are at. They need to know how much they have in stock, how much they need to order, what units are on order, etc. So the folders that they're going to need access to are order information, restock information, and sales reports. So what we're going to do here is check this box, include all folders. And we're also going to check all folders read-only. We know that we don't want them to have access to any reports in an editing sense. We don't want them to be able to go into any reports and change them. We just want them to be able to run them and view them. So we're going to begin, like I said, with these main settings. The include all folders is pretty self-explanatory. The thing, and this part I'll go over a couple times, but this is the really important thing. If include all folders is checked, and I'm going to open up this folders menu. We're going to kind of talk about these in tandem right now. If this is checked, all folders that are not specified in folder access, so of all the folders, the ones that I don't have here, will be execute only, read only. If unchecked, only those specified in this folder access will be execute only. Additionally, if all folders read only, as we do have checked, is checked here, then the list will overwrite the setting when a folder is added to our access folders without the read-only option checked. So we'll see how this works once we start implementing the roles, but it is a pretty important functionality, so I did want to go a little bit slower and make sure that we all are clear on that. If there is any questions, please feel free to type them. Nick is monitoring, and I can certainly stop and explain it again if there's confusion. I think that's an important part of this to understand, so I just want to make sure everybody's pretty clear. Looks pretty good, though. All right. So to add a folder here, we're going to click Add. It's going to add a new one, and then we're going to be able to select from all of the folders that populate our folder tree. We can delete them with this X right here. And so here we're creating the role for that most basic end user. Therefore, we're going to select Include All Folders, as we said, and all folders read only. I know I'm restating, but this is a very important part of it, so I just want to make sure it's clear. And then I'm going to hop down to the Access folders. And we're going to add the folders Manager Reports, Executive Reports, Employee Information, and Admin Reports here. So what this is going to do is we've included all folders. So if we go back, all folders are going to be everything you see here. This is our UI with no roles activated. Then we've specified specific folders, admin, employee, executive, and manager, that they are not going to have access to. Since all folders are read-only is checked here and here, we're being consistent. We've clicked Include All Folders, which means all of these will be excluded. Again, if that's not clear, please message in and we will certainly clarify, but I think that I think we've gone through it a few times at this point. So what I'm going to do is activate this role, just so that we can see exactly what we've just applied. I'm going to go to my UI and refresh. And now we have access to only 3 folders, and they're all read-only. So we have order information, restock information, and sales reports. We don't see any of these reports, any of these folders that we have excluded from our folder tree. So now I'm just going to give you guys an idea of what sort of accessibility this user will have. As we said, they have locked access to all of these folders, but they can run them. So say they want to run sales reports by category. They can come in here, report 1, and they can press run, and it'll execute for them right in HTML. They can do the same with this visual chart, and these are very basic reports just to give you an idea of the permissions. But if I was to double click on this, like I want to edit, it will give me this message, report is read only. Okay, so that makes sense. Everything makes sense. Again, if there's any questions, please let us know. Keep them coming as we're going. We really like to answer them as you think of them. So I'm going to go ahead back into the admin console, and we're going to go through these next 2 flags in the main settings. And we're all set with our folder access menu. So allow folder management is literally going to allow folder management. It's going to control whether we display or hide the folder management icon and functionality. And then finally, we have this flag to automatically include all data objects. Now, remember the logic of the folders. If we check to include all data objects, then all data objects that are not listed in object access, which is right here, same as the folders access menu, will be available. So again, if this is checked, all data objects not listed in object access will be available. If it's unchecked, only those listed in object access are available. So what this means is we can select to include objects if we only want a few, or we can select to exclude if we want to include most of them with the exception of a few. If a user doesn't have access to all data objects contained on a report, they will not be able to execute the report at all. And this is very important because it brings up an error message that not everyone is entirely familiar with. So I'm going to show you very quickly. I apologize, not an error message, a dialog box. So what we're going to do here to illustrate this, remove this categories data object from the associates role. I'm going to apply, going to go back here and refresh. And as we know, these sales reports that we were looking at are by category. They have to have the category object utilized somewhere on the report. If I try to run report 1, and you just saw that we could run and see this, we get this access denied dialog. So this can be a little bit confusing. There's a couple reasons that we could get this message, but it's important to note that one of them is that the user may not have access to all of the data objects contained on the report. If we add back that categories object and we apply and we, sorry about that, and we refresh, I'll be able to go ahead and run that report. All right. So now we've gone through the main settings along with the folder access and the object access menus. We're going to go ahead into general settings here. So general settings give us settings that can be used to override the global general settings written to your base configuration file. Anything left blank here will utilize the browser culture or the default settings. So the following settings can be overwritten as you see here, and I'm going to go ahead and open up again for our associate role, those general settings. Okay. So we can begin by modifying the report path for any given role. This means that the reports generated from these given users will be stored in a different folder than defined in the general settings, as we are manually overriding these settings. The settings defined in the general section of a role will be taken on top of, in place of the general settings written to your base configuration. These are going to take precedence. This will be looked at second. So as you all know, the report path can be a virtual path, an absolute path, etc. And we do certainly go through that. It's not really in the context of what we're doing today. It's just important to know that you can modify that for a given user. We can also modify format settings, such as the date, the time, or the date time format. For example, if we set the date format to something different from what's set in the general settings in the base configuration, we would see data of type date formatted as such, but not data of type date time. Make sure you understand that there is a difference and they do pertain specifically to those types. So those values will adhere to the general settings for a date time date value unless overridden here, as we said. In our article on roles in the Support Center, which we can link to you after this webinar, we do link directly to the documentation detailing the .NET standards that are acceptable for this date, time, and date time format, just so that you know you're within the realm and it will work as you wish. All right, so moving down the list, we're at this numeric separator symbol right now. We can modify some more formatting options that may differ based on the location of your role. So if your company is based out of the United States, for example, and you have clients in other countries, your currency symbol may not be the same. So you're going to have to, for this given role, change what currency symbol is appended when they select to append it. And again, on a report level, we know that this can be modified, right? We can go right into the cell format menu, and we can modify on that report level what numeric currency symbol or numeric decimal symbol or numeric separator symbol is used. This is specifically useful if we have an entire group of people, an entire bucket of people that falls under this role that's going to need the same symbols for numeric separator or currency or decimal. And that way, they don't need to go in on every report and modify those symbols. It's simply going to be set for their role, for their user. And they don't even need to know about it. You can set it up so it just happens, and as far as they know, it works great. All right. So next we see server time zone offset, which is, again, very useful in cases that you're not located in the same time zone. So this will take in a value that converts server time to client time. And if we negate this, it will set client time to server time. Left blank, it simply takes the server time. The next setting, show grid lines in report viewer, is very familiar to all of us. It is also something we can modify in the format cells menu, in the report options menu. So it can also be changed on the report level as well. All right, so this is where we're going to be working a little bit today. We have the allow creation / editing of express reports, and we go through each of our report types: standard, crosstabs, dashboards, chained reports, and express view. And we also offer the option to allow them to create an express view but not edit it with live data. So in our cases here, if we look at the general settings that would be written to our base configuration, we can see that all of these are set to true. So as I touched on in the beginning, this is what's going to be taken as our base settings. All of these are set to be true. If I change nothing in here, this role will simply adopt all of the base settings, and nothing will be different. This is only to modify. So what I can do here, if I want them to be able to create express views, I don't need to go in and set that to true. I can just leave these as blank, and they will default to true. Express, standard, crosstab, and dashboard and chain reports, however, I don't want them to be able to edit or create. So I am going to set all of these to false. And again, this is for my associate user, so keep in mind, very basic end user, doesn't need to know a lot of reporting, not really making those reports. We just want to let them play around with the express view and maybe make a few views for themselves. All right. So moving right along, we have some styling options. We can show the toolbar, the themes, the grouping, and the formula button. This all applies to express reports. So this is really going to allow you to create an express report option for maybe your users that are a little bit above the one we're describing here, but you can take away some of those options. So it doesn't appear so overwhelming. It's more basic and simple, and they really know what buttons they need to click to get the report that they need instead of having to go through all of the menus and really figure it out for themselves. Again, this is all useful in simplifying the Exago experience for your users. Okay, and we do have some scheduler settings down here for our purposes today. None of our users are using the scheduler. So we don't need to change anything for any of these roles. We really want to focus on this, the top half of the general settings, and then also these, folders and objects. This is the most important part today. So I'm again going to apply this and just refresh over here. And we can see, as we saw before, he can run these two reports. And additionally, I want to point out, if we click this Create a New Report button, it's going to bring me directly to the Express View UI. He does not have access to any other type of report creation. So where generally, when we click the plus button, we see a list of options. In this case, it brings him right to the only designer he is allowed access to. If we drill in here, we can see that he only has access, again, to those objects that we gave him access to. If I go right over here, we can see categories, order details, orders, and products. And those are going to be the same 4 that we see here that he can use. All right. So I'm going to pause for a moment. We've walked through the first role I'm going to look at some questions and see if there's anything that could benefit everybody, so just bear with me for one moment, please. Okay, great. So it looks like Nick's got a pretty good handle on the questions. I'll certainly keep an eye out towards the end and see if there's any that would benefit everyone, but it looks like he's doing pretty well so far. All right. So we're going to move on to our second role. Our second role is going to be in our fictitious Northwind company, the manager of our first role. Here, we want to give access to all of the folders, and they'll all be read-only here as well. But we're going to open up a little bit of this functionality. So let's clean up here really quickly. I'm going to deactivate our associate role. And you can see that it grays out the entire role section of our admin console now. And I'm going to go ahead into manager. So let's start again in the main setting. All right. So you can see here, we've given him his ID. He is a manager. We are going to include all folders. All folders are going to be read-only. And then we're going to include all data objects. We don't really care so much about limiting his information. We just want to, we really just want to limit what folders he can make changes to. What reports can he actually make changes to that will save to the base configuration? That's what we're interested in. All right. So since this user is the manager of the person who is in sales, he's going to need to oversee the restocking process. He needs to know what information this associate needs to have available to him in order to do his job aptly. But this guy isn't a power user. He doesn't, maybe he's not that comfortable with Exago, or he just started using it, or any number of reasons. It could just be that we want to add more security. For this purpose, we don't want him to be able to edit the reports that are contained in the folders that his subordinates are looking at. We don't want him to be able to directly edit these sales reports, because it's very easy to do something wrong or go awry, and then you don't have the correct report saved. You have one that you somehow went wrong with, and it's not working anymore. We can't guarantee with this user that he'll go into the report and will flawlessly manipulate the data every time. So for this purpose, we gave him full access to this folder manager reports. Manager reports is going to be, we have included all folders, and we have included all folders read-only. If we put manager reports here and checked read-only, it would simply exclude it from the folder tree completely. But by unchecking read-only, since it differs from this, we ensure that this will not only show up, but it will not be read-only. He will have editing access to this folder. So how does this help us? What we can do here, and I'll apply this, and then navigate back to my UI. First, I'll activate it, then I'll apply it. Now we'll navigate back to our UI. All right, so we see all of our folders. He can view any reports he wants. But this manager reports folder, he can actually drill into, and he can edit any of these reports, and he can work in here, he can create new reports, etc. And before I get any further, I just want to show you how we have the general settings set up for this user. He is allowed to create express reports, standard reports, and crosstabs, as all of those may be useful. He does not need to create dashboards or change reports. He's not going that that in depth, and of course he has access as well to Express View. Okay. Now we'll navigate over here. And if we go back into these sales reports, so these are the reports that the manager's employees are going to be using for their job. They need these reports to be accurate. They're just a set of canned reports that they need to run every day to view how the data has changed. So say he wants to add to this report 1. He runs it here and he thinks, okay, well, I know that we could report on the units in stock and the units on order as well. And that can only help my associate understand where our products are at. But when I try to edit it here, I get an error message because the report is read-only. I don't have permissions to edit it right in here. What I can do is right-click. I can duplicate this report. I'm going to save it into my Manager Reports folder, and I'm going to call it Report 1 Copy. Now what I can do is go into Report 1, and I can edit this. So if I double-click here, in Manager Reports, we can see my report here. I made it using the Express Report Wizard. I can add those fields that I'd like to see. So we wanted units in stock, maybe, and units on order. And this is really the important part. The important part is not what we're adding. It's the fact that we can add them here. We're going to add some metrics for these because it's likely that we would want to see the total for the category. And then we're going to save. So I know this is what I want my report to look like. What I'm going to do now is move it into the finished folder so that my manager knows it's finished. Oops. Sorry about that. So we'll save it and we'll close it out. Save it again. And we'll close it out. And then we can move it into this finished folder. Now, as a manager, my job is done. My role has done what it was meant to do. All right. Just as a note, before we navigate out of this role, only the manager, so far, of the roles that we've seen, has access to this Manager Reports folder. He's the only one that can see this. His associates cannot see which reports he's copied to work on. They don't know what he's working on. They don't need to know what he's working on. This is his report folder. All right. So now, if we deactivate this role, I'm going to go ahead into our third role. So this is going to be your systems administrator. He is the power user. He's too busy to make all of the simple report changes himself. The sales reports are really not his forte. He can do much more important things with his time. But for that reason, the manager is in charge of making these changes, and then the admin simply approves them. And he's able to see the manager's reports. He needs access to those reports, the finished ones that the manager is presenting to him. And then he needs to be able to move that report into the folder so that the subordinates can see it, so that the associates can see it. So obviously he needs access to all folders, and he's not going to be limited in any way. He's our top Exago gun. He's our power user in this scenario. He can create any type of report, and I'll go ahead into his settings so we can walk along as we read this. He includes all folders. I'm going to activate him. None of them are read-only. He also includes all data objects, and he has access to any of these report types. As we said, there's not much limiting that we need to do here because he really is pretty close to the base config. So we're going to apply, go back over here, and if I refresh, he has access to all of these folders. And now what he can do is navigate into this Manager Reports folder in the finished. He can run this and see what he thinks. Okay, I like it. Okay, I don't. If he doesn't like it, he goes back to the manager, says, hey, can you change a couple of things? They don't look the way I wanted them to. But maybe he likes this. Maybe this is perfect. So then he just says, okay, well, let's just move this into our sales reports. And now, and we'll put that right in by category as we saw. And now all of these associates can see this new edited report. And we can delete this one as a systems admin. And now they only have the new, better, refurbished report that the manager has detailed for them. So in this way, roles can really keep quite a bit hidden from your basic end users and only show them what they need. We often find that much confusion comes from just having too many options, too many things to do. There's multiple designers and extensibility options and crazy options within each designer. And it really can help your users if you limit what they have access to so that they're only using what they really need to know how to do. I want to touch on this filters menu really quick. Filters, for most practical purposes, data filters are set via the API. You rarely will use them in this setting, so we're not really going to touch on them too much, but I did want to mention that they're there. And if you would like more information on them, simply reach out, of course, or there's lots of information on roles in our support site, and we will be linking you to that article afterwards. All right. So I just want to go through a quick synopsis of what we covered today and end with a touch on those two messages we saw just for diagnostic purposes. If your users write in and say, hey, this is what I'm getting, it's nice to be able to say, all right, well, that makes me think it might be something to do with this. And then you have a direction to go in. So let's recap very quickly over this PowerPoint. I think I'm seeing a little bit of lag here. Okay, so this was our role one. He had limitations. He had little reporting ability, no editing permissions. So this is the type of thing. This is just to give you an idea of the type of thing we're able to limit. I'm going to go ahead to our manager role. Again, we went through all of these, not the important part. What I wanted to get to here is these specific errors. So if you see report is read-only in trying to access a report, pretty clear. The user is not allowed to edit this specific report. It should point you to roles, but it should give you a very good idea of what exactly is incorrect in that role or what exactly is limiting this permissions. If you see access denied, however, this is a different error, and this can indicate, one, a lack of permission to an object that's used on the report, as we saw, or a lack of permission to edit report type. So I do want to touch on this very quickly. Let me go ahead back into my associate role. And I'm going to illustrate how easy it is to run into this type of problem. Actually, I'll use my manager role. So my manager role has access. Sorry, just doing a little bit of cleanup. My manager role has access to the manager reports. But he only has read-only access to the other folders. So what we can do here, if we check out the folders, he has full access to manager reports. So anything contained in this manager reports, say he had, I think in our example, he had moved to that report copy, report one copy. So if we activate this role and we put that report one copy back into here, and remember that was an express report. Oh, sorry about that. Can't do that within his role. You can see how limiting roles are. You can't move around any reports that are contained in a read-only folder. You really can only run them. Okay, so if we were to move this up to our finished folder where it was when the manager was working in here, we activate this role, but then we're going to take away the manager's ability to work with, to edit express reports. So he's not going to be able to edit express reports or standard reports or crosstabs. He can't edit any reports now. but he has access to this folder and it's not read-only. So intuitively, he thinks, okay, I should be able to edit these reports. He's going to click here and it's going to say access denied because he has no means of editing this report. He can't use the Express Report Wizard as we did, and he can't even use the Standard Report Wizard because he doesn't have access to either of these report types. Okay. So those are the two big ones when you get this access denied message, and certainly two initial places to check. They're definitely a good place to point your users towards if they are seeing that. And then finally, I'd like to invite you all to join us in 2 weeks to learn about how to apply this knowledge to your multi-tenanting setup. Happy reporting as always. I'm going to take a look at the questions, but that is about it for today. And we look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks for Travis's lab. It's going to be a really good one. Okay. We did have one question that I think could benefit everyone. We had someone ask if the read-only can affect at the report level rather than just at the folder level. With a custom folder management assembly, this is certainly possible. Our support site gives you more information, and I believe that Nick has linked that article. All right. It looks like the questions were pretty much user-specific today, so Nick handled them beautifully, and of course, I appreciate all of you being here. We're gonna we will be sending out a link to enroll in the upcoming lab. It comes out, I believe, a week before, so it should be coming out in exactly 1 week to you guys. And then, as always, follow the link and enroll just as you always do. And we look forward to seeing you. Thank you all so much. Have a great